So in this video, I'll be talking about how to create alert buttons. So here's basically how an alert button should look in your browser. So basically what you create are buttons that when I hover my mouse over them, they change to a darker shade. And I've created another button that I've not decorated as the sixth one just so you can have a comparison between these guys. And now, what CSS changes do we need to make for each of the buttons to look like this? So if I don't do any CSS changes, it looks like this. So what CSS styling do we need to do? Well, first of all, the button element by default, it comes with a border. It's really thin, but does come with a very small border, and we don't actually want that, so we need to turn that off. And secondly, the text is black in color by default, right? And we want to get rid of that. And thirdly, do you notice that between the text here, and up, right, down, left directions, there is a lot of spacing? We need to add that in, and we need to use the padding property to add that in. And of course, the font here is way too small, so we need to increase the size of the font. And last of all, by default, the mouse cursor, it doesn't change to a hand when I hover over a button, so we actually need to add that in. So anyways, let's go back to our file now, and let's create what I just showed you. Let's create 5 buttons. I'll use cut and paste. So let's add the text inside of them. The first one, let's add text of green. The second one, let's add text of blue. The third one, let's add text of orange. For the fourth one, let's add text of red. The fifth one, let's add text of gray. Right, and let's add a button that we won't style just to remind you, give you a comparison between an alert button and unstyled buttons. So in this one, I'll write the word default inside. Now, these alert buttons, they all have a certain CSS properties in common. Just for convenience sakes, we'll group them all together in one class. So all of these properties, all the 5, will all have this one class. So let's create a class and call it button btn. And these properties are common to all of the buttons except the default one. I'll say all the buttons, that excludes the default one. So all these buttons do have this class. They all have this property in common. So let's set those properties. So let's set the border to none. We're going to turn the border off and set the font color to white. Let's use the hex code. And let's give these buttons all a padding of 16, 32. Let's give them all font size of 16. And let's set the cursor to pointer. So this automatically makes the cursor turn into a hand. Let's give this class to everybody. So now we want to add the individual classes that are unique to each particular button. Now, I did say unique in this case, but what I mean is this. Buttons, typically you don't just make one, so in the real world we tend to use classes because buttons are generally not unique. So in this case, even though only one button would have this class, I'll still use classes. Yes, you can use ID to do the same thing. I'm just doing it how you would do in the real world. So let's take the first button, and give it a class of green. So set the background color. What happens is, what is the background color by default? So background color, let's set the background color to 1ED837. This is just a shade of green, and this. I will go 159D28. Okay, so this is basically a darker shade of the first one I used. And let me show you how this will look in the browser. See? This is what we had in the file I showed you at the beginning of the video. So, in all honesty, the remaining few are quite similar, but I'll just go through them anyways. And let's set a class of blue to the blue element. So we'll give it a background color that's blue. And the hex code is 6699FF. That's the blue color. And we want a different color, a different shade I should say, when you hover over it. So for this one, we'll set a darker blue shade. 004DE6. So yep, that was just a darker shade of blue. Let me show you what this looks like now in the browser. See, this is our blue button. So let's repeat the process with our orange button. Same idea, so set the background color to an orange. So FFB833, this is an orange color. Add the class in, of course. And let's give it a, when you hover over orange button, let's give it a darker shade of orange. So set the background color to FFA500. Let me show you what this will look like in the browser now. See? Hover over, change, 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 change. Now, moving on, let's decorate the red button. So, as you can probably already guess, red, you set a red background color, and the color code we'll be using is FF5C33. And the darker shade, which we'll have when you hover your mouse over red, is background color E62E00. Let me show you what this looks like in the browser. See? Red. Da, da, da. And this is the this is as a reminder the default value. And lastly, let me decorate the gray button. So set a class of gray. Give the button a class of gray. Let's set the background color to B3, 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 and let's set the shade when you hover over the button to a darker shade of gray. So 808080. So let me show you again what this looks like in the browser. So anyways, this is what it looks like on the browser. Whenever I put my mouse over it, the button changes colors. So this really isn't that hard. You see variations of this on the internet quite a bit. This is not a difficult exercise. Try it yourself, play around with the code yourself as usual, and you'll get better at this. But anyways, this about wraps up our video. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I'll see you next time.